Hey everyone, welcome to a new More Layers. I'm Seth Mariano.
And I'm Jordan Smith. And for today's episode, we understand that streaming is kind of all the rage now for watching TV shows and movies, but we figured we'd take it back a bit to when DVDs were all the rage. And we're going to specifically talk about a lot of the bonus features that were featured on them.
Yeah, I was thinking, DVDs have been becoming um, less and less relevant lately, arguably. Like you said, and like I was thinking, streaming is kind of where the action's at right now, and I definitely have utilized it quite a bit, probably more than anything recently, or that either platforms like Tubi or Netflix or YouTube, if you can count that.
Mhm.
But but when the DVD hasn't completely gone away, it's something we definitely utilize in Artists Unlimited. We put all our productions on it every year,
Yep.
and and yeah, and we definitely have some more or less nostalgia, Jordan and myself, for it.
Oh, yeah. I have a whole rack right over here. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
within the camera shot, but there's a whole rack or two over here
Oh
just
yeah, I
of
see it. Yeah.
DVDs.
Uh, oh yeah, it can be seen. Yeah.
For sure. I love them all.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's quite the stack.
Well, this one closer to me. That's uh, games for like the GameCube, the Wii, and the Switch. The one further away is the DVD rack.
Oh yeah. That's kind of looking like the GameStop shop in there.
A little bit, yeah. But that's what happens when you have a bunch of games that you've saved for the vast majority of your life.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Definitely. I remember, hearing about the DVD a long time, and it was something so. I guess the word I'm looking for is elusive for a while, and then finally getting my hands on one for the first time and getting super excited.
Do you remember what it was?
I believe it was Max Keeble's Big Move.
I don't know if I've seen that one.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of a widely panned. I feel like it was one that's kind of a cult classic for like a bunch of us like 90s 2000s kids. It was um, a bit a bit of a cult hit with Disney live action. It was mm, a lot of you have probably heard about it and seen it and liked it, fondly remember it. But
Yeah, I haven't seen it myself, but I'll definitely be looking it up afterwards to see what kind of movie it is. I'm sure it's fun.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was my earliest memory of a DVD, and and while video cassettes occasionally at least had their extra features as well. This was definitely more prominent on the DVD. You to have a lot of supplementary material in addition to the actual film program itself.
That is very true because with VHSs, it was all on a strip that
Right.
it just played from beginning to end, and it would usually feature something at the end, maybe. Whereas with DVDs, there's a menu that you can access even before you watch the movie, and it shows all the different bonus features, sneak peeks for upcoming films, behind the scenes stuff. And we'll get into
Yeah.
a few of these things in a moment.
Yeah.
But with the way you were able to navigate menus on a DVD, you could access a lot more without having to go through the whole cassette.
Yeah. True. Very true.
And of course, by talking about the bonus features, I feel like one of the most obvious things either of us would address is the outtakes or bloopers that come with some of these movies. And of course, you get the standard ones for a lot of live action films. But one twist that I loved growing up is when animated movies would do it. And most people, when they think of animated movies with bloopers, they think of Pixar.
Sure.
And one thing I really appreciate with those bloopers is it's not just like animation screw ups, for the lack of a better phrasing,
No.
but they make it seem like these animated characters are actual people. And as a result, they seem a lot more real, a lot more believable. And one example that always comes to my mind is from the Bugs Life bloopers, where Ada is constantly screwing up her line or messing with Hopper, and he's just like, "This is the 15th take. I cannot work like this. I will be in my trailer."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there was so much comedic potential now that I think about it, because that cast in particular for A Bug's Life was littered with considerably large names in live action comedy, like Dave Foley, Julia Louis Dreyfus, and others. And so I'm not sure how much of that was like made up on the spot or whatever. We may never know, but there's yeah. But those guys are notorious for definitely coming up with such great deliveries and great humorous moments on camera. So I feel like it was kind of in their wheelhouse anyway.
Absolutely. And you can definitely tell sometimes when a blooper for an animated film is scripted, like when one of the characters trips or slips around or something like that, or says something like, "I cannot work like this. I'll be in my trailer." Uh, but I feel like there have been some instances where it's not scripted, where one of the characters will accidentally say their line wrong or forget the line, and then the animators will take the recording of that and just turn it into a blooper. Now, when it comes to specific examples, I think there's at least one or two in A Bug's Life again, uh, where somebody says the princess's name wrong, or when Dot just flat out goes, "What is my line again?"
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But
And this continued on, of course, with Toy Story 2
mhm.
and with Monsters Incorporated. And I feel like maybe after that, I think they kind of phased it out or kind of retired the whole bit. Thought it was getting old or something, but it was good when they did it though.
Well, it definitely was. And even all these years later, after they stopped doing it, people have been asking, practically demanding Pixar to start doing this again. It may be more difficult now to do it with 3D animation as opposed to hand drawn, but I could very well be wrong. I mean, all their bloopers have been in 3D animated movies. Uh, and I think one of the only times a movie under the Disney umbrella after that did some sort of blooper reel was actually for Lion King when it re-released in theaters, because that came with a blooper reel eventually, and I'm sure that's on a DVD now. But they had a few times where somebody would mess up their line, or I think they had an animated portion where Mufasa, played by James Earl Jones, was like warming up to roaring. And I feel like that was just James Earl Jones kind of practicing or like warming himself up to actually do the sound. Like that's what I'm thinking happened. Maybe that was all scripted ahead of time, but it feels like it wasn't. But yeah, that is one of the only times I think Disney did bloopers after the other three that we mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't see that. I don't know if it was included on like the Diamond Edition Blu-ray or anything, which I have a copy of, but yeah, yeah. Well, it does sound like kind of interesting.
You can easily find it on YouTube if it's not on a DVD somewhere. But I'm pretty sure it came out when it was re-released in 3D.
Yeah.
But Disney, as a matter of fact, is not the only franchise to have an animated film that involves bloopers. There was actually a VeggieTales movie, believe it or
Yes.
not, that actually did that. Uh, when VeggieTales did Jonah a VeggieTales movie, and then they released it on DVD, they actually had a blooper reel.
Yeah, pretty much in the same vein, if that's the looking for.
It was definitely in a very similar style. Characters would mess up their line or forget what it is, or there was one in particular where Jonah was trying to jump onto his camel and kept falling off, and there would be a plane in the background, even though that wouldn't make sense for the time period of the story. But they had their own blooper reel, and they actually, I believe, they also had a version of the blooper reel that was in Spanish. Now, as a kid, I definitely did not know Spanish, but I somehow found some of the bloopers to be even funnier when they were done in the Spanish language. Don't know why. Maybe it was just the way everything sounded, but it was still absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, there is an interesting difference between English and Spanish that the pacing of the syllables at least sounds faster in Spanish.
That's true.
Something because I have like Hispanic or Puerto Rican friends among my church family, and including one or so in the technical ministry, and sometimes I'll overhear them converse in Spanish, and a lot of it sounds more rapid fire, at least compared to how we would talk in English, which I guess I always thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. I remember taking some Spanish classes in school, and I feel like, similar to what you were saying, there were a lot more syllables for even simpler words. So it would make sense to have everything at least sound faster when they're trying to say the same sentence, but there's more syllables involved. So maybe the sheer speed along with the animation is what made me laugh as a kid.
Yeah, yeah, that might be.
Now this next one, it was on a DVD that my siblings and I had growing up. I don't know if we still have it at this point, but it was kind of a collection of episodes from various cartoon shows. I remember Powerpuff Girls being one of them.
Yeah, was it
But
like a Cartoon Network collection or?
of some variety. But I remember, and this is also on YouTube now, they had something similar to a blooper reel, simply called Say What, where they had different shows like the Flintstones was on there. The Powerpuff Girls had one where the characters were forgetting their lines or messing them up. This one felt a little more scripted, but it was still executed in a way that was absolutely hilarious. Uh, I'm trying to remember what the first one was. I know Ed, Ed and Eddie was in there as well. Um, yeah, I can't remember what the first one was off the top of my head, but it was still well executed. My sister and I especially will quote it all the time. And for those that haven't seen it, I recommend checking it out.
All right.
And for at least when it comes to bloopers, the last one I wrote down, it's kind of a blooper reel, but it was more like animation errors. Because The Incredibles had something called The Incrediblunders.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yeah, I have the
Yep.
DVD.
And it would kind of show a lot of scenes before they were fully animated. So a lot of the characters were stiff, or they were missing various parts of themselves, or their hair was missing, or something like that. They even showed the wedding scene, and I think the priest, like they didn't animate his pants yet, or something like that, which as a kid would definitely be hilarious. Uh, I gotta watch it again because it's been a while since I've seen that one.
Yeah, it kind of puts it all in perspective because prior to that, animation, at least the computer animated film world, hadn't quite, as far as I know, figured out how to perfect like a realistic general human appearance. For the most part, they'd avoided characters with that would require hair, clothing, and things like that. And that's one of the reasons, apparently, and Phil Vischer, VeggieTales creator, talked about this in his book. When he was making VeggieTales or developing VeggieTales, computer animation was still pretty much in its, I guess you could say, maiden voyage, if you will.
Or like its
And
early stages.
yeah, right. And so they hadn't really figured out how to do realistic, good looking, arms, hair, and clothing, legs. And so that's why he ended up choosing anthropomorphic vegetable characters as the main cast.
And honestly, I feel like that solution was kind of clever, because then you don't have to worry about as many complex animations, because they don't have limbs, most of them. So all they really need to do is hop around. They don't have to worry about like elbow movements or joint movements in general. And then when they need to grab something or hold on to something, it's just kind of levitating there, which,
Yeah.
as weird as that sounds, it's actually kind of clever, kind of funny in a way. Because it's like it doesn't make sense, but in the context, it doesn't really need to, because that's not the focus.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't think that much of it when I watched those videos as a kid. I thought maybe it's a little bit weird, but I was more focused on the story. Somehow it didn't bother me really.
Oh, sure. And then there's been a photo or two that circled around where people were in Bob and Larry life-size costumes, but of course, because they need to have safety precautions and such, they had their arms and legs out. And seeing that, I just think back and go, yeah, I'm glad Bob and Larry don't have limbs, because it would probably look really weird if they did.
Yeah, that's a pretty creepy sight in my imagination, even if I don't see it for myself. But yeah.
Yeah, save yourself the trouble.
Yeah.
So moving on from bloopers, at least for me, I then thought about different commentaries. There weren't too many that came to my mind that really stood out, but there were two that I thought would mention, because they both kind of relay a fun fact of sorts. I think this one came with the first SpongeBob movie. They were kind of going into, with Steven Hillenburg involved, they were kind of going into uh, marine biology, because that's what Steven Hillenburg wanted to do, and kind of comparing some of the characters to their real life counterparts. And you get to see things that you would not normally see in real life, like the different kind of sponges or crabs or squids, what have you. But one little tidbit that, of course, as a kid, I also thought was really funny is when talking about Squidward, one of the things they mentioned is that, at least up to that point, they didn't really have Squidward using ink like a squid normally would, because to them, they thought it would look like he was using the bathroom or something.
Oh, sure.
Which kind of came full circle, because in the next SpongeBob movie, Sponge Out of Water, Squidward does ink himself, I guess, for the lack of a better phrasing. And he even goes, it happens when I'm nervous. So yeah, that they kind of confirmed that that's why they didn't do it for the longest time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Marine biology was actually the career that Hillenburg worked in, well, before he got into animation and started doing like Rocko's Modern Life and SpongeBob and all that stuff. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and it definitely played a big part in inspiring the elements and the characters and stuff that you see in SpongeBob SquarePants. So
Yeah, that's very true. And I think somewhere in there they explained why Sandy was there, even though she's not a sea creature. I just don't remember too much detail on that.
yeah. or
Um,
explanations as to why Gary sounds like a cat.
yeah, that is very true. I'd have to look that one up again. Maybe they
Yeah,
thought it would just be humorous.
yeah, yeah, which
Uh,
sounds fair enough. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Then the other one I thought of, especially since I got this for somebody not too long ago, is for Batman the Animated Series. For long diehard fans of the series, one thing some people would notice is that pretty much every time the villain, the Scarecrow, showed up, his design was completely overhauled, which wasn't really consistent with the rest of the cast because most of them didn't get a redesign until much later. And even then, it would only happen maybe once. So that left a lot of people confused. And then I think when the DVD came out, there was a featurette that talked about why this happened. Why did Scarecrow's design change so much? And it ultimately boiled down to they couldn't settle on one. Every time they design Scarecrow, it's like, I don't like that one. The next time he shows up, we're going to make him look different. So there wasn't really any in story reason for it. They just really had no idea how they wanted him to look.
Yeah. Oftentimes, I think characters definitely go through, you know, a very dramatic evolution of design. I feel like, like there were multiple different designs, different looks drawn for Woody in the Toy Story franchise before they actually landed on one. So I feel like usually it's probably really settled pre-production, but it's either way something that's commonplace in animated working.
Oh yeah, and even when in the middle of designing characters, sometimes you have to change the name entirely. Like with SpongeBob, his original name was going to be Sponge Boy, but apparently that was already the name of a mop or something like that, so they had to change it. And little tidbits like that are really interesting to see or listen to because it really puts things into perspective as to how things are created. And some people like to see the early stages. And that kind of goes into my next point of looking behind the scenes, which is something that's often featured in the bonus features for a DVD, which is just the behind the scenes stuff. And one thing that always intrigued me, even now, is something called a progression reel. Well, they will show this is usually specifically for animated films, where they will show the same scene at different stages in the animation. Like the first one might be the initial pencil drawing or a storyboard, then really early stages of the animation, then the same scene again, but it's a lot more polished, and then the finished product. And not only is it cool to see how things look early on, but it also helps the viewer get a perspective as to how much work gets put into these films.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely watched maybe one or two of those. I remember them having one specific one on the Monsters Incorporated DVD
Yep.
where they did like progression reel on the scene where the one monster gets the shock like pried off his back.
Oh, what was his name? It was like George
George, yeah, yeah,
Sanderson?
George Sanderson.
Okay, I always struggled to remember what his last name was growing up. But yeah, Monsters Inc. did that. There was at least one or two VeggieTales DVDs that did that as well. I think one of them was Sumo of the Opera because I think it was Larry's character pushing past people to go up an escalator. But there was that as well, and again, it really helps me respect the animators a lot more because a lot of people they'll see the finished product and be like, "This doesn't look good at all," or "This could be a lot better." And I just think, do you have any idea how much work, blood, sweat, and tears are put into these things? Like, granted, some animations don't always look that great, but for the most part, there's still a lot of work put in them, and how they look sometimes can depend on budget.
Yeah, and even an individual frame, and somebody talked about this in a commentary I fondly recall listening to. We can get into more of that later. Is that even an individual frame, um, um, like or depending on how much detail is in one single shot or whatever, it can take like a long time for a computer to generate it.
Oh yeah, especially if you implement all the other things in it, like all the extra characters or the complex backgrounds or what have you.
Yeah. 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 Because I actually have some firsthand experience with this. I took um, my late half of high school, I took a 2-year course in digital media production, and it entailed a lot of video shooting and editing and yeah, and I would have to render frames myself in post, and it could, depending on how complex it was, it could take a pretty long time.
Oh, it absolutely can. The more detail the one shot has, the more complex it gets, and thus the longer it takes.
Yeah.
So if no one listening has seen a progression reel before, I highly recommend doing so, or at least find a behind the scenes featurette that shows the animators in the progress or the process of working on those animations. Because especially for older ones, you might get ones of them drawing each individual frame of a single character moving. And that doesn't even implement all the other stuff that's involved in the shot.
Oh yeah. While we're on the subject of hand-drawn animation, I would recommend, and anyone who's like skeptical, like we've kind of been talking about, check out the work in progress edition on the Beauty and the Beast Blu-ray combo pack. It's basically, a lot of it is it's the full film, except a lot of it with rough storyboards and unfinished animation that might give you some perspective.
Yeah, even this wasn't on a DVD per se, but there's a popular Sonic fan animation that is on YouTube called Nazo Unleashed, where they take what was going to be a new design for Supersonic and and turn it into its own character because it was scrapped by official productions. Uh, the guy was going to make a sequel, and even every once in a while posted updates, but eventually decided that he didn't have the time to do it anymore. So what he did was upload what he did have alongside unfinished animations, and that also shows you how complex it is because again each frame is individually drawn, and like it's like I'm just blown away by seeing back to back what it looks like before it's done and then right after it's done, because it's just so complex, and it earns my respect because I would not have the patience for something like that.
Oh yeah, with all the ink tracing and the painting they got to do afterwards,
Hmm.
if it goes forward. Yeah,
So any animators out there, you have my respect.
and mine as well.
Yes, for sure. And then one other behind the scenes thing I always like looking at, especially if it was on a DVD, is when they would show the actors in the booth recording their lines. And sometimes they would have a side by side thing where it shows the animated character talking while also showing that person saying the line into the microphone. It's kind of like, I like it for similar reasons for the Pixar bloopers, where it made the characters seem a lot more real because you see where that sound is coming from and some of the techniques that the voice actor is doing to help make what they say sound a lot more real, sound a lot more believable. And sometimes I don't know if method act is the right word per se, but they'll sometimes get so absorbed into the character. Like, for example, for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, there was footage of Idris Elba actually wearing the gloves that Knuckles has while he's recording his lines for Knuckles. And I think he said something along excuse me, something along the lines of it helped him really get into character, making his lines have a lot more, no pun intended, but a lot more punch. And then you see other people as they're saying their lines, they're throwing their arms around, or if their character's angry, they look angry as they're saying the line. It's just so intriguing. It's kind of like the whole animation process, but with voices, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I get the idea.
So I don't think all animations or animated movies have that, but even live action movies will sometimes show a scene in the process of being shot. So either one works. And then I figured I talk about Easter eggs a little bit, but I didn't want to go into too much detail because usually the Easter eggs that people talk about are featured in the final version of the film. But there was one in particular that I did want to mention because I swear this was real, but I can't seem to replicate it at this point. Maybe I'm just doing it wrong. But I feel like on top of the Incrediblunders that the Incredibles DVD had, there were these secret icons that would pop up ever so briefly in the Incredibles bonus features menu. And when you hit them, you'd get special little clips or something along that line. Like, I feel like there was one that I've been struggling to find where Mr. Incredible was just in the living room in his costume or whatever. And I think he eats something and then just goes and does a little dance until he's off screen. But maybe I'm just remembering that wrong. But I swear that was a thing.
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
And then there was one, it was kind of an early animation type of thing. It took the scene where Dash is on one of the guards' hovercrafts. I don't know if that's technically what it's considered, but it's right when he goes to punch Dash off and then he hits the side of the cliff. But this little featurette showed him celebrating in different ways. Like the first one they showed, he just threw his hands up as if he was signaling a touchdown. Uh, the second one, I think, had him doing this type of movement. But again, like the one I mentioned with Mr. Incredible, I've been struggling to find it. I really want to believe it was a real thing. And maybe I'm just having trouble finding it again. But those are the kind of Easter eggs in bonus features that I love to look for.
Yeah, I'm not sure if those specific ones are like just only on the Blu-ray or on the 4K disc or whatever, because I don't remember seeing them on like the initial DVD release that I got.
Well, if I remember to, at some point after this, if I do some research and it's mentioned somewhere, I'll send you a link.
Cool. All right.
Then the last thing I wanted to mention is something that Seth kind of touched upon earlier on with the Artist Unlimited DVD. Our DVDs of our performances don't really have much of a bonus features list to work with. It's mostly play the whole show, play act 1, play act 2, or just go to a certain scene. But the one bonus feature, at least I consider it a bonus feature that I love is in there, is the meet and greet. And what that shows is somebody going around with a camera, kind of filming everybody afterwards when they're interacting with the audience, like kids going up to meet their favorite character, or just people going up to say hi to us, or us saying hi to them, or just in the middle of taking photos. But it's really a sweet thing to see, because it really shows the people who get to see it just how close a lot of us are as a family, how well we interact off of each other and other people, and just how important overall this organization is to a lot of people.
Yeah, honestly, when I go to shows, I mean, I still every now and again attend shows that some of our volunteer performers are in, and well, even more than watching the show itself, I get more excited about just seeing them and catching up, and
Mm.
because because I just love them so much as friends, and they're just wonderful, lovely people. I just
Mhm.
and I can tell that it means a lot to them as well.
Oh yeah, and sometimes we'll run into somebody who used to be part of Artists Unlimited but isn't anymore for one reason or another, usually because they graduated high school. And when we see those people, even though we haven't seen them for a long time, we act like we just saw them yesterday and we're still really excited to see them. And like you were saying, we catch up, we see how everybody's doing. And my personal favorite part of the meet and greet, which I don't know if it's always showing me doing this on the bonus feature, but one thing I definitely love to do is when I'm interacting with a young child, I like to stay completely in character, because some of them, for all I know, they may believe that the character they're looking at is the actual character and not the actor behind it. Like, for example, when I was Bert in Mary Poppins, one thing that I would sometimes do if a kid was scared of me is act like I'm cranking my arm to shorten my height so that I don't look as intimidating to them. It stays in character, and in most cases, it makes them laugh.
Yeah, Disney could probably use you.
I would like to think they would at some point. I've had a lot of people say that I have a radio voice or a voice suited for animated characters for Disney or something like that. So maybe one day, who knows?
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. I mentioned on my own list, things like outtakes and Easter eggs. We've touched up on that, and I definitely listened to a handful of DVD commentary tracks myself, and the first one that I recall listening to was actually well, the one by like the guy behind the video series of Animusic, which for those who don't know, basically it's a set series of computer animated segments with original digital synthesizer music, and all the visuals that you see on screen, are controlled by whatever music is programmed into the technology that they're using.
Yeah, my
So,
personal favorite is the one with all the marbles being launched around.
Pipe Dream, yes,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, and so the DVD copy that we owned of the first album that they put out included a commentary track recorded by the main creative force behind all of this, Wayne Lytle. And he talked in great detail about kind of the science and the technology behind the creative process, and sort of a breakdown of how the whole system works. And it was certainly somewhat beyond even what I could comprehend now, but it's still somewhat fascinating, very informative, and yeah, yeah. So that was my earliest commentary memory there.
Yeah, I one commentary thing that actually comes to my mind now that I also think was on a DVD was for the movie Facing the Giants.
Yeah.
Because I remember there being commentary for my personal favorite scene in the movie where they talk about Stan Schultz and then they be like, "Hey, isn't Stan Schultz a cartoonist?" No, that's Charles Schultz. and then they go on for another minute or so, kind of making fun of the guy. I don't remember much of what they said, but I do remember commentary from the actors talking about it.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. And then another good commentary track I remember was one on the Incredibles DVD by the writer and director Brad Bird and producer John Walker. And they spent a lot of the time, or the Bird spent a lot of the time of that track, acknowledging like specific animators for their contributions to all these different scenes. Like, this guy, this guy was responsible for animating this character in this scene, and it's what like this is the type of guy who definitely will give credit where credit is due, and he seems like a guy who's a proud leader, very proud of the team he put together for this movie. It's just I think in a way it just shows how grateful he is for the people under him.
See, that much I highly respect, because a lot of people will not always do that sort of thing. Well, they will acknowledge the people that they worked with. It's like, sure, their name might pop up in the credits for half a second, but unless you're the director or one of the main actors, chances are your name is eventually going to be not forgotten per se, but not really mentioned much when talking about a project. So when the person that everybody is going to see, like their name, is the one that most people will recognize, if that person will also uh, point towards the people who he worked with, it's like that is an incredibly respectful thing to do, because just because you're the main name attached to the movie doesn't mean you're the one who did all the work.
True. Yeah. I feel like, yeah. Yeah. And then there was one commentary track that I fondly remember, and I would play it more than once. It was a very, very different, unorthodox, unusual type because because it really had less to do with the film itself and was more to do with just like flat out entertainment. And it was on the aforementioned Jonah VeggieTales film DVD.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it was the two central creative forces behind VeggieTales, Vischer and Naraki, who wrote and directed the film, um, going back and forth at improvising in character as two of the characters they voiced in the franchise, Larry and Mr. Munt specifically.
Mhm.
And it was, yeah, so it was very much all centered around improv. They were talking as if they were like real filmmakers, real actors, as if these characters were that, and all these very creative references to obscure, or at least for kids, obscure entertainment like Saturday Night Live and Spencer Tracy and all this stuff is like it's pretty wild, but it's definitely memorable, probably for that reason, because it was unlike any commentary track I've ever heard on a DVD anywhere.
Yeah, I definitely would play this all the time growing up as well. I think the character of Khalil was also involved in there. I don't remember who voiced him though.
Not on the commentary track, but I think maybe you're thinking of one other extra feature, which I did also play multiple times, the digital dailies.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Yes, yes.
Yeah, which basically is kind of a reel of rough, unfinished shots with all of this comedic dialogue, uh, improvisational dialogue added in, as if they're real filmmakers, kind of reviewing footage that they've just recorded.
And now that you bring those up, I actually remember in this one Disney movie, specifically Mickey, Donald, and Goofy's version of the Three Musketeers, they actually had this bonus feature where they played one of the scenes near the beginning of the film, but they had the voice actors for Mickey, Donald, Goofy, and Pete talk as if they were providing the commentary on the scene, like what it was like to shoot the scene. And the actors were talking to each other in character, and it was really fun.
Yeah. 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 I myself didn't see the film myself, but yeah, it does sound kind of interesting though.
Oh, for sure. And when I see you probably tomorrow, if I remember, I can bring it with you and let you borrow it.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I guess you could. Yeah, I'll be at that meeting tomorrow. I'll see you then. Um, I take and then one particular very unique to its franchise, as far as I know, was a feature, kind of recurring feature that Robert Rodriguez did for or the Spy Kids sequels that he called 10-minute film school, where he kind of explains into the creative process behind his special effects illusions and staging different set pieces and plotting everything visually and and so basically his whole approach is basically like just move a few things around. You can tweak a few things. Um, you can fix a lot of stuff in post. You don't have to go around hauling a bunch of stuff, building a bunch of stuff. Here's what you can do better and more efficiently is kind of the whole attitude of it. And again, like for instance, there's a scene where the two Spy Kids are fighting the skeletons on the cliff on the island, and basically said, basically what I had them do was, just swing their fists, swing their swords around a bunch of times, and then I would add the skeletons in later in CGI and have them react accordingly, and that's how simple it was. So
That's definitely an interesting take coming from him because he's well known, especially for movies like Spy Kids and Shark Boy and Lava Girl, I'm pretty sure, where he would do a lot of the work himself. So considering he's kind of giving a lesson, recognizing the fact that he's done a lot of the different steps, it's like you tend to take it more seriously because he knows what he's talking about.
oh yeah, yeah, he definitely explains it really, really well, and it's very, very logical. You know, he says, a lot of filmmakers would go to extreme measures, extreme tactics to like, and very stressful steps to like get this effect going or get this thing done. But there are easier ways that you can do this. Whether it's with a computer
Mhm.
or just even the way you build something is kind of, I think, the point he makes.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to look those up because I would definitely love to see like the kind of things he would teach in 10 minutes.
Yeah, 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 definitely worth a look. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's all I've got. And so thanks everyone for watching, listening, and you can keep up with us on my Instagram page, Seth_Mariano_AU, and YouTube and Spotify. Right. And you know, send me Instagram DMs or leave some comments on YouTube or on my posts on Instagram, and let us know your thoughts on whatever, any ideas, suggestions, questions, comments, anything.
Yeah, and let us know what your favorite bonus features on a movie are, if it's bloopers or commentaries, Easter eggs, the 10-minute film school, like Seth mentioned, or something else entirely. Do you love to look at the behind the scenes stuff? Do you like to more so see the finished product or the actors recording their lines? Any sort of bonus feature that you like, let us know what it is. If you have ideas for future episodes, those are welcome as well.
Yes. Well, until next time, thanks everybody. Take care.
So long.